Today's topic are the 3 big myths about beating employee burnout. And it turns out that these myths hold people, especially high achievers, back for years and years and years and can decelerate, slow down, and even implode your career. So the key is, let's debunk the myths and set a path forward. Welcome back to the show where I help you get productive, get promoted, and get the corner office. Make sure you subscribe below because I'm releasing a new episode every week. And if you like the strategies today, you're gonna love the ones coming up soon. So in today's topic, 3 big myths about beating employee burnout. And these myths hold so many professionals back, especially high achievers who are pushing to get to the next level in their career. And if you operate under these myths, it can hold you back, it can be demoralizing, it can create a lot of consternation, lost sleep, and ultimately lead to just more and more burnout, and burnout spreads. So you actually end up impacting the people around you, including your friends and family and coworkers. So the key is, let's understand these myths today. I'm gonna share these myths with you today so you can debunk them in your career. And once you start questioning them, and you start questioning the beliefs behind them, you can start to move forward and ultimately have more success and accelerate your career. So let's dig in. Myth number 1, burnout means you're weak and it's something to be ashamed of. Turns out it's nothing to be ashamed of because it means that you're progressing in your career. Yet so many people, myself included, operate day to day like we're the only ones experiencing burnout. It's something we should keep quiet. If I shared my burnout with someone, it would mean that I'm weak and that I'm not prepared for the next level. It's gonna hurt my chance of promotion. It's gonna isolate me from the coworkers. And the next thing that's gonna happen to me is I'm gonna be getting my ticket to go out the door. I have to go find a new job. Turns out this wasn't the case for me. For years and years and years, I was fried, fizzled, burned out, and I felt like I need to keep it to myself. The only person I was really sharing it with was my wife. And poor thing, every night I would come home and unload my complaints on her, my frustrations, and she would sit there and listen. But I noticed that maybe I would feel a little bit better after sharing those concerns and frustrations. But after a while, guess what? What I realized, I would walk back into work the next day and I'll be experiencing the same level of burnout. Then one day, I decided in a presentation to share my own personal burnout, right? What it meant to my relationships, what it meant to my own health, my own energy levels. And frankly, it made me feel like the future for me in my job was very bleak, like there wasn't a promotion path. And I need to figure out something, but I wasn't really sure what to do about it. And it turns out that this vulnerability allowed me to connect with my coworkers and the audience in a much more powerful way. And people after the presentation came up to me and actually shared their own burnout stories. I wasn't alone, and it turns out we're in it together. And I would share with you today that burnout doesn't mean that you're weak, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, it is part of the human experience. I believe that most people experience burnout at least once and oftentimes multiple times in their career. And the career mission that we should all be focused on is ultimately not necessarily just to prevent burnout, but it's to overcome the burnout that we're experiencing and prepare ourselves and equip ourselves with the strategies to help us get unburned out in the future when it occurs. Now, if you're still saying, well, yes, Ben experienced burnout, that doesn't mean everyone's experiencing burnout. Well, check out this statistic. A survey from FlexJob and the Mental Health Association showed that 75% of people have experienced burnout at work, with 40% saying that they've experienced burnout specifically during the pandemic. Yeah, so there are a lot of people out there experiencing burnout. And yes, it goes to show that the pandemic has even aggravated this burnout even more. So you're not alone. Now, if you might be thinking, yes, Ben, people are experiencing burnout during the pandemic, but once we get back to work and we start to go back to the new normal, burnout isn't going to be as rampant. Look back at the research though, and what we know from extensive research from Deloitte, that there have been similar burnout statistics over the last few years in their research. So this is a trend that's been going on for years. It's not just about the pandemic, although the pandemic has certainly aggravated it. So you're not alone. It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means ultimately you're growing in your career and it's time for you to equip yourself with some new strategies. Myth number 2, burnout is caused by your job. Yes, your job can aggravate burnout and it can make it worse. Yet so many people blame the job, but I'm here to tell you today that the job is innocent. Usually the job is innocent. And the key is more about your alignment to the job itself. In fact, when I was experiencing burnout catastrophically the first time, I remember describing my job to people I would meet and they thought, man, Ben has a really cool job, which was so strange to me because I felt like I was in a living hell. But turns out my job and your job, if you're experiencing burnout, would be really cool to some people, right? They would probably love certain aspects to it. And when you embrace this myth and you understand this myth and we debunk it, you begin to look at your alignment to the job versus just the job itself. It's an awful lot like a Formula One car. That's right, a Formula One car. Imagine a Formula One car who's racing down the track, doing their thing, going down the streets of Monte Carlo or whatever race it happens to be. Now imagine taking that same Formula One car and putting it in the Baja 1000. The Baja 1000 is a treacherous 1,000-mile race run in Mexico with much different vehicles, right? It's in the sand. There are lots of obstacles. If you put that Formula One car in the Baja race, that is a misalignment. It's just not gonna do very well. And so I encourage you to think about your career like a car on a racetrack, right? You've gotta have the right car, right? The skills, the strategies, the work experiences that you have, but also the job itself is like the racetrack. And sometimes it's just about the racetrack. Now you can make modifications to your skills, right? You can equip your car with new wheels, your proverbial car with new wheels, new transmission, new engine, right? You might need some other things on it. You can also start to make tweaks to the road, right? The job itself. But the key is start with the alignment. When you get out of the mindset of, hey, my job is terrible, the job is bad, my clients, my boss, blah, 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 blah. When you go down this litany of excuses and whining, it's just not productive. Now, no job is perfect, okay? And your job might be really contributing to the factor, but look at your alignment first. It's a far more proactive perspective to take. Also, when you start looking at this myth, it's easy to get into this idea of my job is all I do all day, right? So this is my job description. This is what I do. However, when I go into organizations and I talk to leaders, oftentimes I say, can I see your job description? And they say, Ben, I hadn't seen that job description in years. If they pulled it out, it probably wouldn't be really what they're really doing every day in, day out. Most people don't do their job description because jobs and organizations are evolving. And the good news is for you, what that really means is for you is you can impact your job in a positive way. There are core activities that you do every single day that you got to do, whether you like them or not necessarily, to add value to the team, to your boss, and the organization. But everything outside of that becomes much more negotiable and more like the clay on the wheel that you can mold to your interest, your passion, and your strengths. So it turns out you can easily debunk this myth by looking at alignment and starting to impose your will on the job versus just having the job impose its will on you. Myth number 3 is that burnout means you should quit your job. Look, I quit my job many years and I've worked with clients that have quit their jobs time and time again. And turns out when you're burned out, this may give you temporary relief, but it is temporary. I know when I left my job, it was like I was followed by the ghost of Christmas past. No matter what job I went to, I always had the same bad boss, same bad client, same bad whatever frustrations in the job. And you're just following around with this. It turns out the key is to stay in the job you have and work to make it better. Now, you may end up leaving at some point, right? That is the nature of people's career. But what you take with you are the tools to battle burnout. That's right. Take the tools with you from job to job, right? Make yourself burnout proof by developing your own skills and strategies to deal with it. So instead of quitting, begin to understand those activities in your day that energize you and those that de-energize you or drain your energy. And the idea around burnout is to craft a workday that has more energizing activities for you than have draining activities, right? Energizing versus draining activities. We'll understand that difference and then start to have the conversation with your manager and your team around that. Understand what their activities are that energize them and that drain them, and then be able to start to craft a workday around that, to start to build up a more energizing workday. Now, when I start talking about this, a lot of people say, Ben, if I made a proposal to get more of the energizing activities in my day, my boss would just say, not today, and shut the door on me. Well, the key is how you're presenting it. So when you start this conversation, right, talk about how you doing more of these energizing activities actually are good for your team, your boss, and the bottom line, right? Talk about it from the business perspective, not just what you're going to get out of it, right? Talk about the value it's going to contribute, and usually the conversation will start to gain traction. Bonus myth. It's also important to address the idea that taking a vacation will alleviate my burnout. It may help temporarily, but the problem is when you take a vacation, you pay the pre-vacation and the post-vacation penalty, which is all the work you got to do to get ready, including talking to your team about what to do while you're gone so you can really disconnect. And then you come back and there's this mountain of email to address. And so you're penalized on both sides. And yes, I'm not anti-vacation here, but it's important to recognize that the most important way that you can address your burnout is ultimately by impacting your day-to-day activities. That's right, impacting your day-to-day activities are the best way to alleviate and conquer your burnout over the long haul. So I've hit the 3 big myths today: that burnout means that you're weak and shameful. Debunked that one. That burnout is caused by your job. That one's now out of here. That burnout means that you should quit your job. And the bonus myth was that burnout means all you should do is just take a vacation. So now that I've addressed the 3 big myths around burnout, plus the bonus one, make sure to stick around for the next video where I'm gonna equip you with some new strategies to beat employee burnout.